There is hope on the horizon. This is state of emergency, day 57. It's the 8th of May, it's a Friday. I'm here in Järve woods, which is right next to Ülemiste lake. That's the lake where Tallinn gets its drinking water from, and it's like nestled, this strip of woods, between the lake, the railroad right here, and then one of the main lanes? Traffic lanes? No, streets. Well, it's, a lot of cars there. All in all, things around here are definitely getting better. You can feel that the atmosphere is more relaxed. It's still like around 10 days to go, I think, but you can feel that people are taking things more easily, and I think the stress levels have been going somewhat down. So yeah, the finish line is in sight. There's a bit more than a week to go, the last day being the 17th of May, next Sunday. And there's reason for optimism, because the numbers recently here have been very low. It's been a whole week with single digits as far as new cases go, and that's basically the smallest the numbers have been for the whole outbreak. And also the number of patients who are hospitalized is steadily decreasing. So yeah, things are not looking that bad. And the news as well are more and more carried by promising signals. For example, they're opening the open-air museums, and one of the biggest ones in the whole country is right here in Tallinn, called the Estonian Open-Air Museum. And this weekend they were finally opened again, and they had quite a lot of visitors. Still, that didn't cause any problems, since the territory of the museum is huge and people were scattered all around it. And regarding other restriction or the end of the restrictions, then the public playgrounds here in Tallinn will be once again opened starting from the 11th of May. And they've been closed for a while, and the 11th of May is already Monday. And the 11th of May will also be the day that shopping centers will once again be almost fully opened. The exceptions are indoor playrooms and entertainment venues like casinos, bowling alleys and billiard halls that will remain closed. The 2+2 rule will still be enforced inside the shopping malls, and it's for everyone or every company themselves to make sure that they're being followed. The police can make checks now and then and assign fines if anything goes wrong. And for example, the restaurants inside the shopping malls that for a long period of time could only sell takeaway can now cater the customers on the spot. And inside the shopping centers, it's recommended to wear protective equipment like gloves and masks, but it's not mandatory, so really it's everyone's own choice. And also services in the churches will now start again, starting from already the 10th, which is this Sunday, the day after tomorrow. The big news is that some international travel will soon be reinstated. For example, for the people who are working in Finland, they can start commuting between the two countries starting from the 14th of May. The traveling is allowed only if you have a work contract in Finland or for very dire personal reasons. Still, people commuting between the two countries are urged to limit their movements in the location, whether it's Helsinki or wherever they work in Finland. No official quarantine will be enforced, but it's called like this voluntary quarantine. And no quarantine will also be enforced if you come from Finland to Estonia, which is also a huge difference. It's a similar deal that the Finns had with the Swedes, and while this is a huge deal for tens of thousands of people, then regular travel between the countries is still on the hold for the time being. They're working on the details, but at the moment no one really knows when that will be reinstated. So I can, for example, just take a ferry trip to Helsinki. But the case is very different between the Baltic countries, meaning the 3 Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. So starting from the 15th of May, the borders between these 3 countries will be fully opened. The countries have been fairly successful in limiting the spread of the virus, so it seems the time has come to start opening up. There are some debates that perhaps Finland and Poland could soon join this zone of free movement, but also no real deals have been struck so far, and we'll just have to see how long that takes, or yeah. But basically what this means is starting from next week already, next weekend, I would have no trouble, hopping on my car and heading on a road trip to Riga in Latvia, for example, or to Vilnius in Lithuania, or to wherever really in the three countries. And it's going to be curious to see how many people will use that option when that becomes possible again. I have this feeling inside me that a lot of people are waiting to just head out for a trip of whatever kind. But I guess a lot of people are also still very careful, which is very understandable. If we compare the three Baltic countries, then we can see that Estonia has actually been the one that's hit the worst as far as the virus goes. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see the analysis after some time, that what's behind this. Does this reflect that we're more open to the Nordic countries like Finland or Sweden, even though that Latvia, for example, has more air traffic, or what might be the causes behind that. Still, the spread of the virus in the Baltics can be compared more to Finland than, for example, in Sweden, which has been hit far more severely, and Sweden is actually closer to the average numbers in Europe, including the UK. And it's understandable why, from the Swedes' perspective, why they want to compare themselves to the countries that have been hit the worst in Europe, like Spain, Italy, or the UK, which by now has become the country with the highest number of deaths in Europe, exceeding the 30,000 threshold as I'm recording this. So far, Spain and Italy both have more confirmed cases, but the current trends suggest that it's likely that that's going to change in the future as well. But let's turn our glances back to Estonia. Still, some news that is worth focusing on and pondering about. For example, the fact that examinations this year in high schools will be voluntary, and there will be no examinations whatsoever in the basic school. So that's something. Or like, for example, how the state's forest management center is offering seasonal jobs for up to 100 people, since the hiking tracks and facilities need more maintenance and care these days due to people spending more time there, which I guess qualifies as good news during times of economical uncertainty and rising unemployment. And yes, while the news regarding the outbreak are quite positive here, then the economical impact is starting to show itself more and more. And tourism sector is understandably the one that's probably been hit the worst. For example, the hotels reported that this April in Tallinn, the percentage of booked hotel rooms dropped to 1.5%. Last year at the same time in April it was around 68.5%. I mean, mostly they're waiting for travel to be reinstated between Estonia and Finland. They're not really counting on internal tourism, for example. We'll see how long it takes until the travel between Estonia and Finland will be back to normal or close to normal, and whether the free movement between the Baltic states will have any meaningful impact for the hotel sector. As far as the international travel goes between Estonia and Finland, as well, at least with ferries, then Tallinn, the biggest ferry company, has had a drop in passengers of 95.9% in April. And that's a massive drop for literally the biggest company in Estonia. But it's still a priority to keep Tallinn functioning and to make sure that it doesn't go bankrupt. The government is working on the plan. The details are still somewhat vague, but we should learn more about it sooner or later. I guess sooner is more likely, since otherwise it's going to be too late. And the situation in agriculture is still uncertain. The Chamber of Agriculture and Commerce is not fond of the idea of sending long-term unemployed to work in farms, as they're afraid that the training and administration costs would prove damaging to the level of production. Now, this is by no means a problem with a clear solution. It's actually quite understandable why some people and some political forces around here are saying that this is just a lobby work of the chamber, and this is the time of crisis. We all have to make some sacrifices to make things work. But point being that the producers just don't think that it's realistic that all the vacancies that need to be filled can be done by the people who have lost their jobs here during this crisis. Mostly because since the nature of the job versus the expectations, I guess, of people looking for a job is, quite different. And even the people who haven't lost their jobs but are basically working on the front lines, for example, the people in supermarkets, grocery stores, then life's far from easy for them as well. The working conditions are often dismal, with not enough emphasis from the employers to protect their workers, even with basic protective equipment. And even though they are working longer shifts under a lot of stress and are exposed to hundreds of people a day, then their salaries remain dismal, and PR campaigns from different companies saying that you're heroes and, keep fighting the good fight, then, well, I guess that really doesn't make a difference from them as far as their everyday life is concerned. And this just shows another sad aspect of this whole shebang, that if we're not really even caring about the people who are providing essential services, and we're finding actually out what the actual essential services are, then what does that say about us as customers or as individuals or as collectives? It seems that we're still living in very much a classist world. There's just more different layers, I guess, between the classes, but still a lot of people want to feel that they're superior to some other people. So yeah, still the old servants and masters game going on. But even though our weaknesses and shortcomings are becoming more apparent as time goes by, and even though the illusion of endless economical growth and consumption is showing more and more its hollow core, well, there's still reason to look onwards with faith and will. Yes, we can't really keep on doing the same thing and expecting different results. So maybe we shouldn't just keep on doing the same old thing. Maybe we can take this whole crisis, outbreak as a wake-up call that we should aim to make some fundamental changes in the way that we run things. Maybe our lifestyles need to go through a complete change to make sure that our civilizations can still function in future as well. They have to be sustainable, otherwise we're just going to eat ourselves out. Which means maybe we should find a way to keep the levels of pollution as low as they are these days. Because that is one of the few ways how we can work on avoiding a global environmental disaster that's been lurking in the distance for a long time. So maybe clearer skies and purer air is something that we should set as a priority. And if that means that we have to fly less and maybe use our car less, then maybe that's what we should do. Maybe GDP is not the only holy scripture that we should base our lives on. I just finished Tom Wolfe's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, and I have to say that the impact that this book has had, well, it's been a while since something I read has meant that much and done that much. It's about Ken Kesey, who was, if you might know, which actually I didn't, the author of the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The thing that the movie is based upon, where Jack Nicholson plays the guy who gets stuck in a mental ward and then makes a revolution there. Well, Ken Kesey was quite a revolutionist himself, and I think it's not too much of an exaggeration if I say that he basically started a whole counterculture of the 60s. I doubt it that the hippie movement would have taken place if him, together with his merry pranksters, wouldn't have gotten on the magic trip bus across the states and wouldn't have started doing the small happenings and festivals that they called acid tests. I mean, all I'm saying is that I believe that there's a lot to learn from these guys and from their time. I'll give you just a short glimpse. There's cops and there's policemen, Kesey says. The cop says, don't do that. That's forbidden, and that's all there is to that. The policeman says, you can do that. But if you go too far, you're going to hurt yourself. The policeman is the double line in the middle of the road. I'm talking about inside of us. Okay.